Hello, I am Tara, the author of the Dining on a Dime Cookbook, and this is my mom, Jill, who is also the author of the Dining on a Dime Cookbook, where you can eat better, spend less. We have real food for real families. None of those shiitake mushrooms for us. I just bought a whole bunch of ribs and hamburger for $1 a pound on clearance, and that's the kind of good stuff we eat all the time. So today we are talking about buttermilk, though, because this is probably the #1 question we get on our live show when I'm using buttermilk or sour milk, and probably the #1 question we get as far as food substitutions go. The #1 question for food substitute. We get all kinds of #1 questions, but
well, actually, on the comments on the website, I do the comments on the website. So if anybody ever wants to talk to me, go on the website and make a comment on any post. But on those, this is like in the top 3 questions I get all the time.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And just so you guys know, right here on page 395,
I got it all.
we have a recipe for buttermilk that you can make homemade. Now, I will be honest, before I went gluten-free and dairy-free, I use buttermilk all the time. And making this homemade buttermilk is actually a really, really good way to save money on buttermilk. It's literally a 30-second process.
Yeah.
But if you don't have buttermilk on hand, what can you do to substitute? That's what we get a lot of questions about and that kind of thing. So we're going to talk about the substitutions and why it matters if you have real buttermilk versus sour milk versus regular milk. Go for it, Mom.
Yeah. And so she kind of touched a little bit on what I was wanting to tell, too. We do have the recipe for the buttermilk in here, and I will give you substitution, but look, we've got egg substitution. And this is our miscellaneous section, and I'm just saying this real quick up front because I don't think if people realize what we've got in here. We've got sweetened condensed milk. You can make Cajun seasoning. We've got
self-rising flours right there if you need self-rising flour.
We're going to be talking about that in another video on how to do self-rising flours. We've got all kinds of taco seasonings, barbecue sauces. We've got how to make regular mustard, how to make Dijon mustard,
ketchup,
how to make horseradish, homemade horseradish, how to make, let me just go through a couple of these if you don't mind, Tara. There's the mustards. We got all these mustards in here. But with hot mustards, and we got a lot of mustards in here.
I like mustard.
I was going to say Tara loves mustard. So we got salsas, we've got popcorn, different types of popcorns. This whole section has sunflower seeds, how to make soda crackers, graham crackers, you know.
Yeah.
It goes on and on and on. And I don't think people often realize we've got cheese spreads, spiced honey, you know, and that type of thing. So we do have the buttermilk recipe in here, and
we have a lot of missionaries who take our book and use it on the mission field when they can't get regular foods. They can make them on the mission field using our book. I mean, it's basic recipes that we have totally lost, but that Grandma never went to the store and bought ketchup.
No, or mayonnaise.
Or mayonnaise.
Even mustard or anything. They would make it at home.
Yeah.
So people don't realize, and it's not that hard to make these things.
No.
And a lot of it's just ingredients like vinegar and different odds and ends that you have at home anyway. You don't have to buy a whole lot of special stuff often.
Yeah.
And but that wasn't the subject for today. Sorry about that. But one of the main questions I get is, can I use sour milk instead of buttermilk in such and such recipe? And a lot of seasoned cooks automatically say, yes, you can. That they're both exactly the same.
Yes, you can, but they're not exactly the same.
I was going to say, yes, you can, and no, you can't. There's a difference. And I think the best way, I was trying to think of a way to explain the difference in an easy way for people to understand it. It's kind of like sourdough bread and white bread. Okay, they both are breads. They both taste delicious. But they each have a slightly different flavor and a little bit of a different texture. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And the same way, when you use buttermilk over sour milk, your recipe will have a slightly different taste because buttermilk adds a little, I don't want to even say tangy because you're going to think, well, my cookie's going to taste tangy, but it's a little bit of a you can't describe it.
Well,
But
it's kind of like when you put sugar in stew.
yes.
People are sugar in mashed potatoes.
Yeah.
We get people every time I do that. Oh, that's gross. You're adding sugar to mashed potatoes, sugar to stew. But every single time somebody tries it, they're like, oh, that's the best stew, best mashed potatoes I ever ate.
I know.
It's in the recipe in Dining on a Dime, guys, because it changes the flavor, but you don't taste it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it enhances it.
Salt enhances flavors on something. Yeah. Sugar, you have to use sugar.
Same with buttermilk.
Yeah, and buttermilk does the same thing. Mm-hmm. So the flavor will be slightly different, and the texture sometimes is a little bit different. Not always a lot.
Now, with buttermilk, it's a lot fluffier. So,
yes, that's the difference. Your muffins will be fluffy, but they won't be quite as fluffy as if you use buttermilk. We've got the Nan's sugar cookie recipe in the book.
No, they're more fluffy if you use buttermilk versus sour milk.
Did I say the opposite? I meant the opposite. But we've got the Nan's sugar cookie recipe in the book. Tara half the time uses sour milk because she's got 4 kids. She's not going to throw them in the car and go to the store and get buttermilk for those cookies. And they turn out fine. The kids love them. But I do it with buttermilk whenever I make it, and the kids just think Nan's cookies are just...
stop!
I was wondering if I'd get a raise out of you on that.
No, they don't.
But
they do get slightly fluffier.
But they do get fluffier, yeah. So, but it's not that they're not edible or they're not perfectly good. So that's the difference. Now, so if you want to use sour milk, you can. But what you have to do is how to make the sour milk. It all has to do with the acidity. Buttermilk has a certain level of acidity in it. So in order to get that same level with regular milk, you have to add lemon juice or vinegar. Yeah. And we have you had a sour milk, I think, in the book too.
Yeah, I'll look it up while you're talking, but go ahead.
And so what you do is all you add is either lemon juice or vinegar, whichever you have on hand. I use a couple lidfuls. It's about, 2 teaspoons of lemon juice or 2 teaspoons of vinegar. And always put the lemon juice or the vinegar in the cup first. Then add the milk to that because it'll change the amount of liquid by just a couple of teaspoons, but some recipes that might make a difference. So add your lemon juice or your vinegar in the cup first, and then this is for 1 cup. The recipe calls for 1 cup of buttermilk, and then let it set for 2 or 3 minutes. I usually just dump the vinegar or lemon juice in, pour the milk in. I get my bowl, my mixer out, my other ingredients, and start mixing it up. And by the time I'm ready to dump the milk in, it's ready to use. Now, you need to maybe stir it.
I can't find it in here, but it's in here somewhere.
Yeah, we've got it.
It will curdle, though. I mean, you're going to see it curdle and get thick.
It'll thicken.
It'll separate. And there was a recipe. Man, I can't remember which one it was. There's a recipe I used the other day. I used sour milk instead of buttermilk, and it didn't work. And I should have made a note of it. I cannot remember, and I was thinking I need to make sure that I tell people that. I'm going to think about it while you're talking. But there are a few recipes that you can't switch over. Yeah.
You have to be really careful on them a little bit. A lot of times the baking ones you can get by with a little bit easier. Another thing you can use, though, in place of adding the vinegar or the lemon juice is you can take a 1/4 cup of regular milk and 3/4 cup of yogurt. Mix them together, and you can use that the same as buttermilk. The acidity, once again, and why I keep talking about the acidity is these recipes are made that the acid has to be just right in the ingredients when you mix them up. Otherwise, they won't raise right. They won't have the right flavor. And so if you don't keep that acidity balanced in with the recipe, then it won't come out quite right. Now, one other thing, I know buttermilk can be slightly more expensive than regular milk. But like Tara mentioned at the beginning of the show, you can make your own. Buy your first container, carton of buttermilk, and we've got, once again, the recipe in the book, I think, and on the website, I have got a whole big article about buttermilk, how to make it. We've got on there. And after this video is over, you might want to even print that sheet off to keep it on hand in a recipe book or a folder or someplace, so you have it at all times, you know, to use it. So you can make your own buttermilk, and once you get that first carton, then it's not costing you any more than regular milk, because you use regular milk to make it.
Yeah, I had thought about taking those articles, taking this Dining on a Dime, the new book we're writing, and all of those articles and putting it in a great big book like Carla Emery's old-fashioned recipe book.
Yeah.
I had thought about putting all of that kind of like a how to cook book.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
We've got so much better. Yeah, well, I was going to say, didn't she do 2 notebooks full? We have a viewer that she copied every article on our website off in print form. And what she had, like 2 big notebooks, wasn't it, or something?
Those 3-inch notebooks, she had 2 of them. Yeah.
2 huge notebooks, which I just was amazed, because she likes them so well and you use them. But even if you're hesitating still about doing the buttermilk, one thing too is, once you have buttermilk on hand, don't think, well, I'm just going to waste it because I only use it for the one thing, because you won't. And this here is another section of the book. It's called, I've got my map in there. It's called, it's the leftover index. So we have a whole list of things for leftover recipes. I mean, we've got muffins. You can make blue cheese dressing. You can make pancakes. You can make different cookies. You can make gingerbread men. You can make soda crackers, yeast buns. Those are just to name a few. And so if you have some buttermilk left over and you think you won't be using it, just go to the index here and pick out one of these recipes to use. And I just thought of one last thing I was going to tell real quick. Oh, on using the leftover buttermilk.
You can freeze it. People don't know you can freeze buttermilk. I would pour it in ice cube trays, and then when I just needed a quarter of a cup is 4 ice cubes. So I would just take 4 of those out and defrost them and use them. So you can freeze it, and it doesn't affect the
acidity. Yeah. Well, one thing, talking about the recipes, I by accident found a good use for the buttermilk that we don't have listed in here, and that was, I was making mashed potatoes. Now, I tell everybody, always make sure you have your ingredients before you start a recipe. Check through the recipe and check your ingredients. Make sure in the morning you have all the ingredients you need for your dinner, so that 5 minutes when you're getting ready to start dinner, you think, oh dear, I don't have this or that. I did not listen. I did not practice what I preached. I made up mashed potatoes. I was mixing them up like crazy. I went and grabbed the milk out of my refrigerator. There was no milk in my refrigerator. I was looking so forward to those mashed potatoes because I hadn't had any for a long time. So all I had was some buttermilk. And I looked into that buttermilk and I thought, okay, what's buttermilk going to do to mashed potatoes? But this is a desperate situation, a person who hadn't had mashed potatoes for a month and she was dying for some. So I poured that buttermilk in those silly mashed potatoes and mashed them up.
It was good.
Oh, yeah. I've never tasted mashed potatoes. Yeah. And if you think about it, if it sounds yucky to you, think about this. You put sour cream on top of a baked potato. It's the same flavor, type flavor.
Yeah. Well, and like loaded mashed potatoes has sour cream in them.
Yeah. So so that's really good.
All right, guys. So that's the scoop on can you use buttermilk versus regular milk versus sour milk. That's the lowdown on it. Please check out our Dining on a Dime cookbook so you can eat better, spend less. It is in the description below. Please let us know the recipes you like to use for buttermilk, because we're always looking for new ideas and like to share new ideas with our viewers. So we'll see you guys next time.
Goodbye.